Good evening, friends. Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life. Listen, let me be very clear. We have only just begun in the fight to defend this election, which President Donald J. Trump has won. He has won already. The Democrats, who are expert liars, frauds, haters of our country, haters of due process, absolutely bent on destroying this country, have done everything possible to confuse this election, have destroyed good ballots, have introduced fake ballots, have absolutely introduced chaos, because that's the only language they speak and that's the only mindset they understand, and we have not even begun to uncover and undo what is going on here. We're living in two alternate realities, as I explained to you the other night. One is the mythical world that the mainstream media is painting. And they are absolutely, two things going on at once. Absolutely ignorant of the legal processes that President Trump and his team have put into place, which have their own dynamics and have to work out themselves according to very specific protocols, moving up the ladder of the court system. Remember, when 20 years ago, when George W. Bush was going through this process against Al Gore, he lost in all the lower court proceedings. He won only when it got to the Supreme Court. And somebody was asking me today, well, how come, we haven't heard anything from the Supreme Court? Well, of course you're not going to hear anything from the Supreme Court. They can't just step in. The process has to go through the lower courts first. And that's why it was a good thing that a judge in Pennsylvania, ruled against the Trump team, because then that initiates the appellate process. And there was good news today that I'll explain a little bit later. Two good wins today, by the way, one in Pennsylvania, one in Michigan, which we will explain to you. But understand, this process is only at its beginning. The Trump team is not playing this out to win in the court of public opinion or in the court of the mainstream media. The evidence that they have and the legal arguments that they have, which they are not putting forth anything that they do not believe they can win. They are in this to win. President Trump is not backing down. He certainly is nowhere near saying that Biden has won this race, because you know what? He hasn't. He's not the president-elect, and if anything, he's presiding over a crooked, perverse attempt to steal our country from us. They're not going to do it. They are not going to get away with carrying on their wickedness and their lies. They are corrupt. The whole party needs to go out of existence, the Democrat Party. I'm going to say that plainly, and I'm going to keep saying it. We don't need them in our country anymore. We don't want them. We cannot tolerate them because they're bent on the destruction of this country. Let's just say it, pure and simple. And any of you who are Democrats, it's time to leave that party. If you have any love for America, leave the party tonight. Before you go to bed, leave the party. It cannot exist anymore in this country because it is bent on destroying this country. And anybody who's not convinced of that, well, go to the store. If you're not convinced, okay, go to the store. And those black and white notebooks that you buy for in school when you take a course. Buy about 4 or 5 of them, and then take them here to these broadcasts. And keep your mouth shut and keep your fingers still and listen. Because over the coming weeks, you will learn more and more about what it is that I'm saying. But there were good victories today. There was victory today in Pennsylvania, victory in Michigan. And I want to explain to you all of this. But remember, these things are going through the appellate court process. I was on one of my briefing calls today with the Trump legal team. And they explained it in a very interesting way. They said, look, the way to understand, and this is one of the reasons why there's so much confusion, the way to understand what's going on right now, it's as if Uncle Sam has undergone a terrible trauma. And emergency medical teams have to come in now to save him. Okay, our nation has undergone a terrible trauma in this this effort of the Democrats to ruin this election, and except that they they didn't succeed as much on the state level or even the federal level. Look at the House of Representatives. The Democrats went running when they saw all these victories that the Republicans are continuing to have in these undecided House races, which again goes to show how is it that the coattails of President Trump brought victories on the state level, victories in the House of Representatives, victories in the United States Senate, but not victories for the guy wearing the coat. It doesn't make sense. It's all out of balance here. But in any case, the point I'm making is, okay, so it's like Uncle Sam has undergone a terrible trauma. So you've got to have these multiple emergency medical people coming in, and some are doing brain surgery, and others are doing heart surgery at the same time, and others are repairing the leg, and you have in a case like that, each of these different interventions has its own particular protocol and its own particular way of unfolding, and this is what's happening now. Multiple people, not just the Trump team, the legal team, but multiple voters and other organizations are introducing multiple pieces of evidence and legal strategies in various different states, all at the same time. Some of it is based on eyewitness evidence. Some of it is an analysis of circumstantial evidence. Some of it is for the purpose of arguing constitutional problems, like unequal treatment of voters. So if in one county, voters who made a mistake on their ballot were given an opportunity to fix it so that it could be counted, but in another county of the same state, other voters making the same mistake were not given that opportunity, so their ballot wasn't counted. Doesn't that contradict the fundamental constitutional principle, for those of you who are familiar with constitutional law in its elementary fashion, namely equal protection under the law? Of course it does. That's a very strong constitutional argument. And another constitutional issue is, are people other than the state legislators changing election law in the state? Well, what does the Constitution say? Again, a little bit of Constitution 101 goes a long way here, and that's why, get those little notebooks and let's start taking some notes. The Constitution gives to the state legislatures the right to determine election law in that state. We don't have a national presidential election. We have elections in 50 states, and each of those elections for the presidential electors, who don't meet until December 14th, by the way, has its own rules, and those rules are set by the state legislature. So if a governor or a secretary of state or a supervisor of elections tampers with the law, any ballots accepted under that tampered, altered system are invalid and illegal. Question for our Democrat friends and for the deluded, D-E-L-U-D-E-D, deluded supporters of Biden. If a vote was cast the day, if a ballot was received, rather, the day after Election Day, and state law says it needed to be received by 8 p.m. on Election Day, answer me this question, deluded Democrats. Should that ballot be counted or not? State law says, take Pennsylvania as an example, state law says 8 p.m. on election night, that's the cutoff. Ballot is received the next morning, the next afternoon. Should it or should it not be counted? See, that's why it's misleading, and in fact it's harmful, simply to say without any qualification whatsoever, oh, well, we have to count every vote. No, you count every legal vote. You eliminate every illegal vote. That's the only way we can have a process that is legal, if we care about law and order, which of course the Democrat Party doesn't care about law and order anymore. They don't want to sponsor free and fair elections. They want to sponsor riots in our cities. They don't want to build up law and order. They want to defund the police. They don't want to take 500,000 criminal aliens out of our country like President Trump did. They want to let them come pouring across the borders, come into your communities, where your family lives, where your children go to school and play. Sure, yeah, let them come in. Violent gang members. Violent gang members. Violent gang members. They don't want to cast them out of this country. President Trump has the courage and the ability to do so, and he did so. They don't care about law and order. Rip up the Constitution. Oh, who cares? They don't care about the Constitution. They don't even know the Constitution. All right. I want you to be encouraged. The battle is in the mind of the enemy. Remember that principle. The battle is in the mind of the enemy. The enemy always wants his enemy to think that they're losing. And this is going on now at fever pitch. I've never seen anything like this with the mainstream media. Let me give you a simple example. A judge in Pennsylvania decided against the Trump legal team recently in their effort to amend their complaint and to get an evidentiary hearing. In other words, the media, they're sitting there on their high throne saying, oh, well, there's no evidence. Well, first of all, the evidence is not presented to, the Trump campaign is not interested in presenting the evidence to the media. They're presenting the evidence to a court of law. That's where the evidence has to be looked at. Secondly, the people who are coming forward, voters and election workers and election observers, who say that they were eyewitnesses to things being done wrong, they're not under any obligation to reveal who they are to the public or to the media. They can if they want, but they don't have to. Most of them don't. And so they're revealing themselves to the people who can do something about it. And they've hundreds of affidavits under penalty of perjury have been signed for them to bring to light to the court, not to the court of public opinion, not to the court of the mainstream media, to the court of law. See, again, the Democrats and the media, they don't understand this because they don't care about law. See, this is really a battle between those who care about law and those who don't. The Democrat Party doesn't even know what it is anymore. That's why not a single one of them should be elected to be a lawmaker, because they don't respect law anymore. It wasn't always like this, but it is now. And the sooner we recognize it, the better it'll be for America. So the fact of the matter is, a judge denied the request for the complaint to be amended. Amending a complaint is a common thing, especially when you see a better legal argument or that will give you a better chance in a particular court where your case is going to be heard. But that was actually, the media presented it as a setback for the Trump team, but it was actually a good thing for them. Because remember, George W. Bush, in 20 years ago, in the electoral dispute that arose out of Florida, lost in the lower courts. Didn't win until it got appealed to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court can't just jump in and deal with this. It's got to go up the ladder, step by step. Everything is according to a very specific protocol and very specific constitutional deadlines. So we have to be patient. And don't let the media think that you're losing or that things are bad. They twist everything. A judge denies it at a lower court level. Well, we expect that. And then some people, the media will look for people to say, oh, the president has exhausted his legal options. They'll look for Republicans. They'll look for senators. They'll look for respected people. Their words aren't worth the air that comes out of their mouth when they say them. They're meaningless. The president has not exhausted all the legal options. It's not a setback. There's an appeal process. Did these people forget that there's an appellate process? Just because one judge rules against you, it means absolutely nothing. What it does is it sets up the opportunity then to appeal more quickly. Well, we'll talk about the two wins, but I want somebody else to talk first, and that is Mayor Rudy Giuliani. He gave an update today. And it's a substantial one. I want you to, sit back and listen carefully to Mayor Giuliani, and then I'll come back and give you some further comments after that. Let's listen.
Each one.
We're going to get that clip ready for you here in just a second. And by the way, in my calls with the briefings with the Trump campaign and the legal team, they are very, very confident, very, very positive each day on these developments. They don't introduce things in these court proceedings and these legal maneuvers that they don't believe they can win. They introduce them only because they are convinced they can win. Strong legal arguments, strong evidence. Okay, let's listen to the mayor.
Hi, I'm Rudy Giuliani, and this is another episode of Rudy's Common Sense. And this episode is a truly significant one because it is now quite obvious that we are in the middle of what is going to be maybe the most important historical election contest that we've ever had. I mean, it will rank with the ones in the past, Hamilton, Jefferson, Burr, and others that have gone to the House of Representatives. And this has all the makings of it, and it's there because for all the censorship, for all the lying, for all the cover-ups of the three conspirators to this attempt to steal this election, the three conspirators are the Democrat Party, big tech, and big media. The facts are coming out, ladies and gentlemen. The facts are coming out. And the facts are not one isolated single act of fraud, not one state in which a problem has been found in computation. That was Bush v. Gore, wasn't it? Problem in computation. Remember the Chads? Couldn't figure out who was winning. Okay, that's tough. That was tough. One state, accounting problem. This is not one state. This is not an accounting problem. As we have been investigating this, it very, very quickly emerged, not only from the people that we found, but from the people who have come forward, from the American patriots that have come forward, the brave people willing to take on threats of harassment, threats of losing their job, threats on their children, and in even some cases, threats to their lives. I mean, this is a very bad time we're living in because there's a kind of evil in our land right now. It's been there for quite some time, and I'll define it for you at the end. But this shouldn't be. This shouldn't be. This is a legitimate, very legitimate challenge to an election where there is substantial evidence, of which I'm going to impart maybe 20% to you right now, of fraud. Fraud in our land. Fraud in many places in our land. I have concentrated, obviously, on the states that could change the result of the election, because I'm representing a client who I believe, and I know I probably will get shut off social media for the rest of my life and maybe even put in a jail cell somewhere if Zuckerberg and the other kings of the media and kings of the tech world. But I believe, from what I've seen and the professional experience that I have in investigating crimes for many, many years and the success that I've had in uncovering them, I believe that we have here a very, very dangerous and a very systemic problem of voter fraud, such that the honest votes, if we could isolate those, would elect Donald J. Trump as the next president, and in most states by a fairly substantial margin. And I'm going to concentrate on what I call now the overview. We've given you a lot of the facts. I held a press conference to give a lot of the facts, and we will have future episodes in which we will, as they say, drill down into these facts. We'll show you the affidavits that I can show you. We'll show you the charts that I can show you, and we'll show you the statistical reports that corroborate the direct evidence. But what I want to do now is step back a bit. I want you to exercise logic. Remember, this is called common sense. So I want you to exercise your common sense. There's a great lawyer who influenced me when I was younger to become a lawyer, Louis Nizer. And he wrote a great best-selling book called My Life in Court. And it gave me a hint on cross-examination that helped me enormously in my days in the courtroom. And I was kind of pretty good at cross-examination. He said, not always, but usually, the most common sense result, the most logical result, is actually what happened. And if somebody is testifying to an illogical result, a result that doesn't really make sense, you're going to be able to illustrate to the jury the flaws in that. You got to be careful because that's true 9 out of 10 times. It isn't always true. But it does give you the sense of the power of circumstantial evidence. Or I'll give you another quote from Stephen Bannon. Stephen Bannon says, there are no conspiracies, but there also are no coincidences. Which means when you see coincidences, as an investigator, they've got to be investigated darn hard. So let's start with the biggest one of all, okay? Let's start with the fact that somewhere around 11, 12 on November 3rd, 1, 2 on November 4th, Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States, as far as I remember, was leading in every state that was then ultimately taken from him. Okay, let's review that in a second, okay? He was leading in Pennsylvania, and I'm going to give you the rough numbers. You can go back and check. I may be off a little here or there. He was leading in Pennsylvania by about 700,000, 800,000 votes. And there was about 65% of the vote cast, if my recollection serves correctly. That's very, very hard to come back from. In prior years, with a fair and unbiased calling of states, Pennsylvania should have been called for him. States in which Biden had far less of a lead and a lot more to go will call for Biden, like Arizona, which was called for him almost before the polls closed and turned out to be, I think, a state that Trump won. But if you want to look at the numbers now, it's a state that Biden won like that. Then we go to Michigan. He was ahead by 300,000 votes in Michigan. He was ahead by 8 to 10 points in Wisconsin. And there they were also at about 65, 70% of the vote cast. Nevada really hadn't meaningfully reported yet, so we'll take them out of it for now. He was ahead in Georgia and North Carolina by 2.5 points, but they were in the 85 to 90% of the vote cast by that time. I recall being awarded the mayor's race when I ran the second time, and I was ahead by exactly that, 2.5% with 87% of the vote cast. That's a call that usually goes for you. He was ahead in North Carolina by the same margin, and they wouldn't call that. And then he was ahead in Virginia, and I don't remember the exact numbers in Virginia, but they wouldn't call that either for him. In fact, I think they had already called that, even though he was ahead much earlier, for Biden. Now, what are the odds that he fell behind in every one of those states? Not just 5, not just 3 of 5, not just 2 of 5, not just every single one. I don't know. That one strained credulity a bit. That one seemed a little funny, a little strange. They made up 800,000 votes in Pennsylvania. They made up 300,000 votes in Michigan. They made up 9% with, like 80% already in Wisconsin. And in Georgia, up by 2.5 to 3%, entering into like the 90% category of votes cast. And all of a sudden, it takes us 4 more days to count the remaining votes. Somehow he just narrowly loses. Same with Arizona and Virginia. And what were the ballots they were counting that overcame this? The ballots they were counting are the most insecure, most prone to fraud type of voting invented ever. Those are not the words of a mere mortal like me. Those are the words of former President Jimmy Carter and former Secretary of State James Baker in a bipartisan report they did on the dangers of different types of voting. And they listed mail voting as by far the type of voting that could be most prone to fraud. And boy, were they proven to be prophets. And so was Justice Souter, who made very much the same point. Because what happened is the following. What happened is, in every one of the states that I mentioned, and now let's drill down a little deeper, not just the states, they picked a city or cities in each of these states to perpetrate their massive fraud. They didn't do it all over Pennsylvania. They did it in the places in Pennsylvania they own. The Democrat Party owns Philadelphia for 60 years. Sometime take a look at the number of convictions of people in Philadelphia in public office for political corruption. Go take a look at the number of people convicted for voter fraud in Philadelphia. It is astounding. It's astounding. And if the state was crooked in the past, the state is now even more crooked. The state has a district attorney who doesn't prosecute criminals, who was put there by George Soros's millions and millions of dollars, and the crime rate is going through the roof. Right through the roof. Right near the top for murder, right near the top for property crime, because they have a left-wing radical DA who lets criminals go free. This would be a good opportunity to take a short break. I couldn't believe we were evicted from our home that we didn't even sell. Those are the words of a homeowner, Deborah, when she learned she was the victim of home title fraud. It's a devastating crime that can cost you your home. And title fraud is not covered by insurance or common identity theft services. The only folks to trust that I know of to protect your home's title is Home Title Lock. Cyber thieves have discovered the titles to our homes are kept online. They forge your name on your deed stating you sold your home, and they refile as the new owner. In Deborah's case, she didn't even know she was a victim until the eviction notice arrived in her mail. Home Title Lock protects you and your home by putting a virtual barrier around your home's title. The instant they detect tampering, they mobilize to shut it down. Go online to HometitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim and don't know it. Then use code RUDY, that's me, and sign up for 30 free days of protection. That's code RUDY at HometitleLock.com. Thank you for coming back. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Well, the way I look at it, Philly is professional in voter fraud, like Chicago. They're professionals. Pittsburgh's amateur. They don't steal as much. And you're going to see to the numbers. Basically, Philly part of the state did 2/3 of the thefts. What do the thefts entail? And I'm going to do it once because it pertains to all of them. Locking out Republican inspectors so that none of the mail ballots, the ballots that are prone to fraud, the ballots that Carter and Baker warned us against, the ballots that Souter warned us against, not a single Republican got to see any one of those ballots, even though it is a time-honored tradition and the law in every state until several days ago that they have to be inspected. And if they are not inspected, they are thrown out. Even though that's the law in every state, Republicans were pushed aside, knocked aside, put in corrals, hit, harassed, and threatened. And threatened with arrest by sheriffs who sold their soul to the Democrat political machine. Why do they pick Philadelphia? Because they can get away with anything they want to do in Philadelphia. Why do they pick Philadelphia? Because they can go find a hack judge that will say anything, do anything, and make the most ridiculous opinions. Same thing in Pittsburgh, just on a lesser scale. How many votes did they steal in Pennsylvania? Upwards of 680,000 votes. That flips the election right around. And there are many other things they did there. Michigan, they did the same thing in Michigan. Corralled Republican inspectors, pushed them around, pushed them out, made sure they were all gone when the delivery of 100,000 votes came in trucks in the middle of the night, in garbage pails and in trash cans and in buckets. Little did they know, there was an employee of Dominion hanging around and 2 Republicans who remained behind and kind of hid around. So therefore, they have given affidavits, which is direct evidence. We have direct evidence of this, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to trust me. You go look at the affidavits. Got direct evidence of it. Of this 100,000 votes, all for Biden. The envelopes had nothing on them, thrown away. We also have direct evidence of every single Republican inspector pushed out. And we go to Wisconsin. Got the same thing. Republican pushed out. Ballots are examined. Ballots are examined privately, secretly. I mean, they might as well gone into a back room with cigars and just wrote the ballots while they were there. Maybe they did. How would we know? We were shut out. We go to Nevada. You don't think the same thing happened in Nevada? Exactly the same. Same allegations. Little different wrinkle on the law in Wisconsin and Nevada. Actually, better cases because the law there is stricter on absentee ballots than it is in, let's say, Pennsylvania. Georgia, again, Republicans uniformly shut out of the polling places, not the polling places, the counting places, of which are only 1 or 2, in Atlanta, Democrat City for many, many years, Democrat City with a history of corruption, mayors going to jail, and finally, Phoenix, Arizona. Same situation. In each one of these, without giving you the parts of the case I've given you part of in the past and I will in the future, in each one of these cases, there are at least 4 or 5 times more invalid ballots than there are any kind of votes separating them. But I ask you to separate yourself now from the little picture, go to the big picture. How logical is it that overnight he's going to turn every single one of these states? And how logical is it that they all of them came to the conclusion that they should do the same thing? Like the guy in Philadelphia, and the guy in Pittsburgh, and the guy in Detroit, and the woman in Wisconsin, and the woman in Las Vegas, and the woman in Atlanta, Georgia, and the woman in... They all decided to put Republicans in corrals? Like they're horses or sheep? I mean, we should go look and see who had the corral contract for the Democrat Party. Like one single idea carried out in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 states, also done in New Mexico and Virginia. Has to have been a plan of Biden and the Democrat committee. They're going to say they wouldn't cheat? I don't know. A guy who cheats in law school could cheat in a presidential election? What do you think? Guy who takes millions for his family from communist China could cheat in a presidential election? We're not talking about a man with a character for honesty. Far from it. Far, far from it. We've got a little more to cover, and I think you're going to find it very interesting, so come right back. If you want a good cigar, go to a good cigar shop. You want the best, go to Famous Smoke Shop. Let Famous Smoke deliver your favorite cigars right to your doorstep at America's lowest prices. Famous opened in 1939 as a small shop in New York City. Today, it's the largest privately held American-owned cigar business in the country. That's 80 years experience in the cigar business, and they're putting that experience to work for you, making deals on the cigars you love, from affordable, everyday smokes to high-end luxury cigars for your next special occasion. Go to famous-smoke.com/Rudy and click the Activate button to apply the promo code. Pick from more than 1,000 cigar brands. fresh and ready to ship from Famous Smoke's climate-controlled 24,000 square foot humidor. Check out with the promo code RUDY20. That's Rudy, R-U-D-Y, 20, and get $20 off your order. Every cigar purchase you make is backed by the Famous Freshness Guarantee. Get real cigars from a real cigar shop, shipped direct to you from Famous Smoke Shop. Go to famous-smoke.com/Rudy. That's famous-smoke.com/Rudy. Thank you very much for coming back. Now, what are the other logical things to tell you this happened? In the city of Pittsburgh, pick just one now, city of Pittsburgh, there are 17,000 so far provisional ballots. Let me tell you what a provisional ballot is. A provisional ballot is a ballot where mostly, not always, you walk in and you say, I'm Rudy Giuliani, I'm here to vote. Mr. Giuliani, you've already voted. I said, you remember the absentee ballot? You sent it back. No, it's at home. I never sent the absentee ballot back. I always intended to vote. I never sent it back. I'm sorry, Mr. Giuliani. You're right here. It's checked off. You voted. No, I didn't do that. So rather than have a big fight over it, you get to cast a provisional ballot, which almost never counted because they never resolve it, never have the time to resolve it. Okay, if that happened 1,000 times or 1,500 times, you'd say, maybe some people forget. How could 17,000 people in Pittsburgh forget that they cast an absentee ballot? I don't have the numbers yet for the other places. They're higher. It's true in every one of these places. 20,000 in Philadelphia, 10,000 in another place, and 12,000 in another. I mean, not everybody forgets like Biden, 17,000 people in Pittsburgh went to the polls and were told they had already voted and didn't remember it. Or is the more consistent explanation, as a witness in Detroit swore under oath that when they didn't have a person that was registered, or when the person voted for the second or third time, they just assigned it to anybody they had to very quickly. And therefore, there were a lot of these people whose identities had been used to cover the illegal voters, maybe an illegal alien, maybe a person voting for the third time, maybe a person from out of state. So they voted in place of you. And when you went in, you were told you had voted already. And that 17,000, by the way, is growing. And as we go through these cases, in every single one of them, we're going to have a very, very large number of those ballots, of those provisional ballots. And then let me give you one last one for you to think about and understand as we go through this process, which is laborious and is going to take some time, but it is sure necessary to save our democracy. And that is what we call overvote. This is probably the most telling of all. Now, focus on one city where I have a complete and thorough report. I have much sketchier reports for other cities. By next week, I'll have them all. In the city of Detroit, about 2/3 of the precincts in the city, their vote doesn't compute, which is why the two Republicans didn't vote to certify. And technically and correctly, it hasn't been certified. I think it was like 79%. The vote doesn't compute. And what that mostly means is more people voted than people who are registered in the district. So let's say there are 5,000 people registered in a district. How could 8,000 people vote in that district? And wouldn't those 3,000 additional votes be illegal? Of course they are. And why does it happen? Now, let me tell you what the numbers are. They're actually worse than that. The numbers range from about 125% to 350%. What that means simply is that 3.5 times more voters voted than are registered in the district. The reason that happens is all through the pre-voting process, they were constantly assigning phony votes, false votes, like those 100,000 ballots that came in for Biden. You think they were real? Those ballots were they were shot off with the help of machines, and many of them didn't even have anything on the outer envelope, which would make them purely illegal. But then those had to be squared up for some precinct somewhere. These people didn't live in that precinct. They might not even exist. So that's why you have 3 times more people voting than are registered in the precinct. In Detroit, we have a fair number of precincts in which 2 or 3 times more people voted than live in the precinct, even the children. That would allow you, or any sensible, honest person, to draw the conclusion that somebody was doing massive cheating. How do you get 3 times more votes than people who are registered? That's the case in Detroit. Studied. Witnesses ready to go on the witness stand to prove it. That's the case in Philadelphia. That's the case in Pittsburgh. That's the case in every one of the cities that I mentioned to you, which I would call Democrat corrupt cities, because they intelligently selected places they own, where they own the sheriff, not the police, the sheriff, who's usually very political. They own the courts. They own the election board completely. I mean, they owe their jobs to the party boss. And this didn't happen in neutral places. This didn't happen in rural places. This didn't happen even in suburban places. This didn't happen where it's 50-50 Republican, Democrat, or even 60-40. This happened where it's 75-25, 80-20. If, in fact, the state of New York or the state of Massachusetts or the state of Maryland were up for competitive races, it sure would have gone on in my city. So don't feel like I'm picking on your city. I know about corruption in my city. My first race, I was told I had to win by 50,000 to overcome the Democrat cheating. I was told that by a member of the Liberal Party, not a Republican. And I lost by 30,000. The second time, I put $1 million into voter integrity and won. So I know about vote fraud. I know it. I know the techniques, and they used every single one here. And they all got magnified because of the mail-in votes, which were absolutely taken advantage of in a conspiracy of tremendous, tremendous outreach. And I haven't gotten at all to the whole situation of Dominion and how the votes were counted in 27 different states by a machine built by a company that began and continues to be a company that specializes in voter fraud. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. A company that specializes in voter fraud. We will discuss that probably in the next episode or the one after in great detail. But I'll give you a little bit of a foretaste of it. The company that counted the ballots in Michigan and most of those states is a company called Dominion. It's a Canadian company. Why are we using a Canadian company to count American votes? Why are we sending American votes out of the United States? But they don't go to Canada. They go to Germany. Now, why do they go to Germany? Because Dominion doesn't count the votes. A company called Smartmatic counts the votes. The company was founded in the early 2000s by 2 Venezuelans extremely close to Chavez, the dictator of Venezuela. They continue to own the company to this day. They were founded for the specific purpose of fixing elections in Venezuela. They fixed elections in Venezuela. They fixed elections in Argentina. What I am saying to you, go Google it. The press is too lazy or too warped or too crooked. Go Google it. It's there. There's a letter from Democrat Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney in 2008 telling you what I just told you. The company is founded by communists who wanted to make sure Chavez and then Maduro were elected regardless of the will of the people. It's a company that has been kicked out of the United States, even kicked out of Chicago. And how did it get back in? It got back in as a subcontractor to Dominion. And Dominion never disclosed, I imagine, Smartmatic. Or if they did, these governors, like the governor of Michigan, hired them to count American votes. We have a Venezuelan company with Venezuelan voter fraud technology counting our vote. And as we are studying the irregularities in the vote, it's becoming quite clear. It's becoming that again. Been talking too much today. It's becoming quite clear that they interfered with the vote, but that's a matter for another day. So let's conclude on this note. If you just analyze this from the point of view of common sense, it makes common sense that this election was stolen. Trump was ahead in every one of these major states by large margins, particularly in light of the vote that lied ahead, the number of votes that lied ahead, particularly in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. In every one of them, they were able to they didn't miss one. Every one of them, they were able to overcome it. Every one. And we're talking about probabilities now. And they had 7 or 8 or 9,000 people coming in, not knowing they had voted, being told they had voted, and saying they didn't, because those were the patsies that we used to assign the false ballots. I got a case here. You know, I think like a prosecutor, I got a case here. But there's a lot more than a case here. There's our democracy at stake. What is America if we don't have a free and fair right to vote? Not a democracy anymore. These recent Democrats are moving very, very fast towards socialism. And socialism always breeds authoritarianism. You can see it in the dictates that they're giving, almost the way in which they're enjoying telling you can't have Thanksgiving. And if you don't wear a mask, they're going to line you up with the firing squad. You know, treating a mask violation one way, and the district attorney of Philadelphia lets a robber go free. But a mask guy, oh boy. There's always the emergence of a dictatorial attitude and spirit in a communist society, in a socialist society. That's a Freudian slip, huh? But we're getting there. We're moving toward communism. And the first thing they do is undermine the right to vote. I'm going to leave you with a thought. A company that participated in the undermining of the vote, Smartmatic, which is a Venezuelan company, built to cheat for Chavez and Maduro. The chairman of the board was a close friend and business partner. His name is Lord Malik Brown. Very, very distinguished name. Lord Malik Brown. And he is a very close business partner. And he is involved as the number 2 person in George Soros's biggest organization. George Soros, the biggest contributor to the Democratic Party, the biggest contributor to Black Lives Matter, and the biggest contributor to Antifa. Too many coincidences here, ladies and gentlemen. Too many. What I'm telling you is exceedingly dangerous to the survival of our democracy. Democrats over the last 4 years have trashed our Constitution so badly. And because the press just covers up what they do, they're destroying our rights. We got to make a stand here. I don't care how much they intimidate us. I don't care how much they threaten us. I don't care if they say we can't get jobs and we're going to lose our reputation. And this is about our country, ladies and gentlemen. It's about the survival of the greatest democracy on earth. What they've done to it is outrageous. These people are criminals, and they are worse than a lot of the criminals I've prosecuted before, and they are a lot worse than the common criminals that we put in jail or we let out of jail. These people are trying to take away from us rights that were given to us by God. We're not going to let them do it. We're going to fight, and we're going to fight again, and we're going to continue to fight because we have ultimate faith that a much higher authority is looking over this country. It's guided it forever, and we have great faith that we're not going to have our sacred right to vote taken away from us because that's what's at stake here. So stay tuned because this battle has just begun, and we are going to prevail. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless America.
And God bless Mayor Rudy Giuliani, and God bless you, friends. Now, I'm going to tell you 2 victories that the Trump team had today. Listen, this is only in its beginning phases. And for those of you that have just been joining us, have been seeing the numbers going up. I'm Father Frank Pavone, director of Priests for Life, and we broadcast on these channels every single day. And we've been giving you up-to-the-minute updates because I'm on daily conference calls with the Trump team. And I have 2 updates for you about victories that were won today. Understand something. Many of you are asking, when is this going to get done with? Or, how long is it going to take to have a decision? And did President Trump concede? Not only did he not concede, he's not going to. He is fighting this 100% with his eyes focused ahead, as he always does, on all the matters of the American public. And he has very good reason to be fighting full speed ahead, as do all of us. Now, if you listened carefully to what Mayor Giuliani was saying, what you see is a process is underway now. And those who are saying, when will this get done? And others who are saying, you got to prove what you're saying, have to understand the process. The process that's been initiated is precisely in order to show this evidence and prove these points in a court of law, not in the media, not among the talking heads, not in the Associated Press or on CNN, but in courts of law. The team has affidavits, hundreds of them. You're wondering, where's the evidence? Well, do you think we're making up these hundreds of affidavits? People saw the destruction of ballots. People were themselves kept from observing the counting of the ballots. People saw the creation of fake ballots. People saw ballots run multiple times through the same machine. And these people, now, they came forward, they said these things. A process has to happen. This is not, a Law and Order episode where everything is wrapped up neatly in 60 minutes. This is a process that takes weeks and weeks. It's well underway. The people who came forward with the evidence, and by the way, their privacy needs to be protected. They are under no obligation to come to you, to me, or to MSNBC to say anything, okay? What they saw had to be translated into affidavits. And then, not only the Trump team, which has its legal proceedings that it has initiated, but also individual voters in various places and other organizations, too, that have an interest in the outcome of these disputes, have introduced proceedings in courts. And now the evidentiary hearings have to be held like a trial. Witnesses are called and questions are asked and cross-examinations and so forth. So what were the victories today? And this will give you a sense of why we have to be patient in this particular process where the evidence is, in fact, being presented and judged on. In Pennsylvania, And remember, this happened with George W. Bush. When he won back in 2000, there was the legal disputes here in Florida that went on for weeks after Election Day, just like it's happening now. And Bush lost in the lower courts. But remember the appellate process. You lose in one court, you appeal to a higher court. So now in Pennsylvania, okay, the judge was not favorable on the district court, but above the district court, that's federal court, okay, not state court. In the district court, the judge was not favorable, but then it was appealed to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. Today, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals indicated to the Trump campaign that they are allowing an expedited appeal, which means, yes, and today they submitted a brief, the Trump team submitted a brief to that court, and the court is saying, yes, we will decide now whether you can have an evidentiary hearing. That's a formal process in the court where all this evidence that Mr. Giuliani and others on the team are talking about is formally presented. So now we have to see if the Third Circuit Court of Appeals is going to allow that process to happen. Either they allow it to happen and all this evidence gets its proper hearing in a court of law, or they say no and the Trump team appeals it to the U.S. Supreme Court. So for people who are wondering, when is the Supreme Court going to intervene? This is how the process has to work. You have to get in line and you have to go up the ladder. Second victory that was won today was in Michigan. Now in Michigan, and you heard Rudy Giuliani refer to this, a lot of shenanigans, a lot of very suspicious activity happening. And the legislature, now remember, the Constitution gives to, let's do a little quiz. The Constitution of the United States gives to whom the power to decide how elections are handled in each state? By the way, do we have a national presidential election in the United States? The answer is no, we don't. There are 50 states. We have 50 elections on Election Day in 50 states, each according to their own rules. And those rules are set now by whom? Let me give you a multiple choice. The governor, the Secretary of State, the Supervisor of Elections, the state legislature. A, B, C, or D. Who sets the rules in the state for how elections are to be conducted? The answer is D, the state legislature. Well, guess what just happened in Michigan today? The state legislature said on Wednesday morning, okay, day after tomorrow, at 9 a.m., we will have a hearing because we're concerned about what's going on in Wayne County. Now, this is where a lot of this evidence and these eyewitness stories have been coming up, and a lot of suspicious things are being seen there. The legislature wants to hear what's going on before the final certification of the vote. There are discrepancies there in Wayne County, Michigan. Get this, 71% of the precincts have discrepancies between the ballot total and the number of voters. Not a few here or there, but 71% of the precincts in that county have discrepancies between the ballots and the voters. So the legislature of Michigan, and in this matter, the legislature is the authority, according to the Constitution. In this matter, the legislators in Michigan are stepping up to the plate, and this is very encouraging to see. We don't want to certify false votes. They are having a hearing on Wednesday. And you're going to hear a lot of confusing things, okay, because different people in the state are going to do different things at different times. Remember, state certifications can be overturned. They can be overturned. And the legislature is looking into now these discrepancies in Wayne County. So listen, this is going to happen again and again and again. You're going to hear that something in the news, and you're going to say, "Oh, well, this must have happened." Then you're going to hear something contradictory to that. Understand that, first of all, the mainstream media has lost all credibility, completely lost credibility. They're no longer just biased. They're in denial, and they are deliberately deceiving. It's absolutely out of control. Pay no attention. You've got to come to sources like this. I mean, like I said, I'm in communication every day with the Trump team. Or let them speak for themselves. Go to the Team Trump Twitter account. Listen to Mayor Giuliani. You got to go to the source. And you have to sit back and take the time and the patience and put on your thinking caps, okay, to really, really carefully consider that this is a process with many moving parts, that certifications can be reversed if, the Michigan legislature has this hearing, which they're going to have on Wednesday, and they say, wow, this is absolutely, there's no question. These votes are invalid in that county. And they really get to the bottom of what's going on. Understand something. The Trump campaign is not shooting arrows in the dark here. Anybody who thinks that this is just, we're sore losers and stuff, you have no idea what's going on. The Trump campaign is not shooting arrows in the dark. They are not introducing a single legal complaint or process that they are not completely confident that they can win. Based on the solid legal arguments, based on the solid evidence which they have, and based on the fact that given the evidence and given the legal standing that they have, more votes would be declared invalid than the margin of victory that Biden has in all the states where the Trump team is introducing these proceedings. Understand this again. The Trump team is confident in the evidence they have, which doesn't have to be presented to the media, by the way, or to any of us. Who are we? We need to know the results. We need to know that corruption is being exposed. We don't have a right for these eyewitnesses to come to us and tell us what's going on. They have to go to the people that they went to so that their complaint can be taken confidentially and processed in a court of law. The team has the confidence that when these complaints are examined and the legal arguments are followed, not just some ballots will be overturned, but more will be overturned, more will be eliminated than the margin of victory for Biden in all those states. Bottom line, this election has not been decided. And this whole thing can be overturned in President Trump's favor. We have got to be patient. We have got to have some kind of an understanding of the process that is being undertaken here. We have to have an understanding of the way that the courts work. We have to have an understanding of the appellate process. And we have to have an understanding right now that the media is not helping at all. What President Trump says is absolutely true. The media has become the enemy of the American people. The enemy. This is not just a disagreement, and it's not just spin or bias. It's an outright attack on our system. And this goes also to the attitude of so many of these Biden supporters. They want to just go around claiming that he won the election. So do you people really mean to say that you've examined all the evidence that has come forward from the eyewitness voters, election workers, and election observers? That wrong things have taken place to invalidate these ballots? That you've studied all the constitutional issues about people in one county being given the opportunity to correct their ballot if they made a mistake that would invalidate it before it gets invalidated, but voters of the same state in another county who made the same mistakes with their ballot, maybe by failing to sign it or failing to fill in certain other information, were not given the chance to correct it, and therefore their ballot was invalidated. And oh, by the way, those counties were the Trump favorable counties and the other counties were the Biden favorable counties? Do you really, those of you that want to keep saying, oh, Biden won, you should just accept it, just accept it. Just accept what? That we can have an election where we just ignore evidence of unfairness? That means you're just as corrupt as Biden is. That's why you support him, I guess. Do you understand what I'm saying? Oh, well, he won. What gives you the confidence to say that? Because your friends and his friends in the mainstream media projected that he won? What article of the Constitution gives the mainstream media the authority to call an election? What provision of the U.S. Federal Code gives the mainstream media the right to call an election? What provision of state law in which of the 50 states gives the mainstream media the right to call an election, much less you? But the Biden supporters will never answer that question, because they don't know their right hand from their left. Sorry, folks. You were on the wrong side from the beginning. You are on the wrong side of this election. You're on the wrong side of every single policy and philosophy from A to Z that this guy stands for. His policies destroy the country, destroy morality, destroy the Constitution, destroy the courts, destroy our freedom, destroy our military, destroy our borders, destroy our trade agreements, destroy our jobs, destroy our economy, destroy our morals, destroy the unborn, destroy religious freedom. Biden and Harris do not deserve one single vote, and everybody who voted for them owes all the rest of us an apology, starting with Biden himself. He should not, as the president said this, he should not be asking for our votes. He should be asking for our forgiveness. Now, the corruption here that went on is going to be exposed sooner or later, one way or the other. But brothers and sisters, let me show you something. Hold on one second. Here's what Mr. Biden stands for, right there. You see that baby whose arms and legs are being torn off? That's an abortion. That's a late-term abortion. This is the kind of character that this man has. There it is, right there. See? Let that sink in when those of you who say that Biden won think that that's a good thing. You better pray and hope to God that he didn't win. Pray and hope to God that there's not a transition to a Biden presidency. Because somehow or other, the man who would be sitting in the White House, presiding over the country of your children and grandchildren, doesn't have the moral sense to know that this is wrong. Anybody that doesn't know that that's wrong, well, let's go through the list. They're not going to be able to name radical Islamic terrorism as the enemy of America. They're not going to be able to tell the difference between a violent riot and a peaceful protest. They're not going to be able to tell the difference between a legal immigrant and an illegal one who should be kept out of the country. They're not going to be able to tell the difference or even care about the difference between a valid legal ballot and an invalid illegal one. You see, if you can do what I just showed you to a baby, Can you tear up a ballot? If you can tear up a baby, can you tear up a ballot? If you can throw away a baby without any qualms of conscience, can you throw away a ballot without any qualms of conscience? You give that some thought and give me the answer. President Donald J. Trump is the best president we have ever had in the United States of America. Those of us who support him are not going to stop supporting him. We'll support him through a second term, and we'll support him after a second term. We'll support him no matter what happens. If the Democrats were to succeed in stealing this election, because that's the only way that they can pull this off. If they were to succeed in stealing this election, guess what? Everything we have been saying about President Trump, every way that we have been defending his policies, every effort that we have made to distinguish his policies from the diluted and demonic policies of the Democrats, we will continue to be saying, teaching, proclaiming, and advocating 10 times stronger than ever before. This has only just begun, because I'll tell you what the enemies of President Trump want to do. They don't just want to remove him from the White House. They want to remove his memory from the minds of the American people. And that we are not going to allow to happen. Every president eventually leaves the White House. That's not the measure of a president's success. Every president's term ends, whether he has one term or two. And by the Constitution, you can't have more than two. Every president who runs for re-election faces the possibility of losing the election or winning the election. So every president eventually leaves office, and every president can have his policies overturned by a subsequent president, although it's going to take an awful long time, isn't it, for President Trump's judges to go anywhere. President Trump's judges are going to be issuing decisions 30 and 40 years from now. You're going to tell me that's not a victory? That he's put, by the time he finishes his first term, 300 federal judges on the courts, all of whom serve for life? You're going to tell me that's not a victory? But there's a bigger victory than winning an election, winning a second term, or even passing effective policies. You know what the bigger victory is? Changing the mind and heart of American politics. And that's what the MAGA movement is. Make America Great Again. I have my MAGA hats in the other one tomorrow. I'm going to bring it here on the broadcast. I broadcast every day, by the way, those of you that might not know. At 9 o'clock every evening, 10 a.m. every morning we have Mass, and then we broadcast throughout the day as well. But tune in to us on these channels where you're watching every night at 9 o'clock. Greatest president in our history, as somebody was just saying. And you know why? Because he has transformed this country. MAGA is a movement. He's transformed the thinking of the Republican Party. He's transformed the spirit of American politics. Do you know how many millions and millions of people, 6 million in the first election, millions more, another 6 additional in this election, came out and voted for him, who had never voted before or hadn't voted in a decade or more? He has transformed the nature of American politics, encouraging people to vote for a non-politician. Do you see what he's doing? He's freeing us from subservience to the system and the establishment. The American people are sick of establishment politicians, and that's why it doesn't make any sense that they would now elect a man who's been part of the establishment for almost 50 years. We really want to be answering to the swamp? We really want to put the establishment back into power? No. The American people don't want that. And that's why one of the reasons that this election is a loss either way for Biden. It's a loss either way. It doesn't matter if he sits in the Oval Office. That doesn't mean he has won anything. He has not won the hearts and minds of the American people. And you see people say, oh, well, he got this many millions of votes. Oh, really? You including the fake ones? You including the ones that were run through the machines multiple times? Like some of your fellow citizens are telling you they saw? You're going to count the ones that were made up? Are those the ballots that Biden won? Knock it off. Cut it out. Stop the lying. So friends, onward we go to victory in this election. I want to invite you to pray with us. Go to prayercampaign.org. There's some special prayers there that we've posted for the good outcome of this election. Prayercampaign.org. I want to invite you again, as I said, to come visit with us each night. We'll talk more about these things. And now let me give you a blessing, and let me invite you to follow me too on some of you are watching on Facebook, but I'm also on Twitter, Parler, YouTube. FR Frank Pavone is the address, FR Frank Pavone. And you can also support our ministry, as you see on the bottom of the screen there, prolifegift.org, because we rely on people like you to get this work done, prolifegift.org. Let's drain the swamp. Let's get this country on the right track. Let's keep it on the right track. We're really talking about getting hold of our country again. And brothers and sisters, we're going to do exactly that with your active help. Become part of the Pro-Life MAGA movement, prolifemaga.com. I want to invite you to go there tonight. Sign up. Let us know who you are, where you're from, what you may be able to do, because we've only just begun this fight. A lot of us are, we're tired after a long election season, but let me tell you something. This is only just beginning now. We've got to continue this battle for the fight of our country and the values of our country, and there's much that you can do. We're going to keep advocating for the policies of President Trump, keep educating people what those accomplishments are. We're going to spend years educating people in the accomplishments of this president, long after he eventually leaves office, hopefully after a second term. Long time. We got to be teaching it. We got to be showing why it's superior to the bankrupt and corrupt policies and philosophies of the Democrat Party. Those who want Democrats to win, boy, oh boy, are you on the wrong track. You could not possibly be more wrong about anything in the world. You have and you know what? You have no reason to be happy about any kind of Democrat victory, which, by the way, where were those victories in the House of Representatives? Democrats thought they were going to increase their majority. It didn't quite work out that way for you now, did it? That's because the American people, they want these radical Democrat policies, right? No, wrong. They didn't vote that way, did they? What happened to the House of Representatives? Oh, you think Biden won the vote fairly. So what are you saying? They voted for Biden and then they voted Republican for their U.S. House representative? Explain that one. They voted for Biden, but then they voted Republican for the U.S. House? If they didn't, then how do you explain Biden getting so many votes and the House of Representatives getting more and more Republicans? Well, how does that work? The Senate, the Democrats spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to throw out Republican senators. So for all the people that voted for Biden, you mean to tell me they voted for a Republican senator? How do you explain what and who did they vote for the state legislature? You mean to tell me they weren't paying any attention to that? The Democrats tried to take away the trifectas from the Republicans, those states that have Republican governors, House and whatever they're called on the state level, House and Senate, the two chambers of the legislative body. They have different names. The Republicans gained trifectas in the states. Did you hear about that? See, and you're going to hear all sorts of crazy things in the media that are just half-truths, like somebody saying, oh, Biden won the recount in Georgia. Yeah, if you have invalid ballots and you just recount them, you come up with the same result. It's not a recount that's needed. It's an audit that actually starts analyzing where in the world those ballots came from. Listen, there's a lot more to talk about. I appreciate you taking the time to listen tonight. Come back again tomorrow. And meanwhile, let me give you a blessing. Again, prolifemaga.com. We got a lot to do together. We need each and every one of you. Prolifemaga.com. Please go there. Take a moment tonight after this broadcast. Go there. You want to know how to advocate for President Trump? You want to know how to fight to win this country back, no matter who's in the White House? You want to learn how to keep winning elections? You want to learn how to keep our elections safe moving into the future? We need each and every one of you. ProLifeMaga.com. May the Lord bless you. May He strengthen you. May He answer all your prayers, protect you and your loved ones, grant you peace and joy in His Spirit, and make you advocates for life and for America. May He bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you for all your kind comments, and for the others that don't offer kind comments, my condolences for being on the wrong side of history. But we love you anyway. God bless you all, friends. Father Frank Pavone here of Priests for Life. Talk to you soon.
Hello, I'm Evangelist Alveda King. I am blessed to work with Priests for Life, one of the largest and most visible pro-life ministries in the world. Our whole team relies on your financial support to enable us to do our work, produce our programs, and travel the world to advocate for the unborn. May I ask you to support us generously? Go today to prolifegift.org and give as generous a gift as you can. I appreciate it personally and will pray for you each day.
I think we have Richard Lee, we have Jim Garlow, and we have Father Frank Pavone, someplace there in the audience, so I appreciate you. I appreciate you.
Follow him, Father Frank Pavone, Fr. Frank Pavone, on Twitter. He is the National Director of Priests for Life. Please go to priestsforlife.org.